Okay? So I came across this story on Reddit, and I genuinely could not stop reading it. Like, I'm talking I was supposed to be asleep, and I'm just sitting there at midnight with my phone in my face. It's about a girl whose family completely overlooked her whole life, and then had the audacity to come crawling back when everything fell apart. And I'm gonna tell you the whole thing, because trust me, by the end of this, you're going to feel something. So she starts her post with, I'm a 34-year-old female, I have one older brother, and my family owns a business that my dad spent his whole life building. My dad told me my brother would inherit the family business with no real reason, no conversation, just that's what he decided. And I grew up working in that company because my dad built it from nothing over 30 years. Flooring and tile, doing around $2 million a year by the time I was an adult. And I started working there at 16, after school, weekends, summers, learning the accounting, the supplier relationships, the client contracts, and I genuinely loved it. My brother Marcus is 3 years older than me, and he'd roll in late and leave early, and my dad would cover for him every single time. But I never said anything and just kept my head down and worked. So I went to college, got a business degree specifically to come back and run that company better. And when I came back at 23, I was ready. And my dad sat me down and told me that my brother is going to take over one day. That's just how it is, I'll have a role there, but Marcus is the heir, so I asked him why, and he said, because that's what I decided. That was the whole answer, nothing else, just that. I stayed anyway and told myself that if I worked hard enough and proved myself enough, he'd eventually see it. But every raise I asked for got delayed, and every idea I brought to the table got credited to someone else. Marcus was building equity while I was getting a salary. A decent one, but nothing close to what I was actually building for them. Then I spent 3 months putting together a proposal to land a commercial contract with a hotel chain. I did every site visit myself, built the whole presentation and ran every number. And the day before the pitch, my dad called me into his office and told me he wanted Marcus to present it instead because, and I'm quoting him here, clients respond better to a man in the room. So I went to my car and cried for 45 minutes, and then I drove home and made a decision. I gave my notice the next morning, and my dad said I was being dramatic, my mom said I was throwing away my future, and Marcus looked me in the face and said, good, more for me. So I packed my things and walked out. I had some savings, not a lot, so I moved into a studio apartment and took a job at a competitor firm just to stay in the industry. And I spent the next 2 years learning everything the family business had refused to update. New software, digital sales, sustainable sourcing, going at it like I was studying for the most important exam of my life. And at 27, I started my own company with just me and one contractor I trusted. At first, it was small residential jobs where I underbid on price and over-delivered on quality and collected 5-star reviews, like they were the only currency that mattered because at that point they were. And by 29, I had a team of 8 and a client waiting list, and by 31, I signed my first commercial hotel contract, the same hotel chain I had pitched for my dad's company 4 years earlier. And when I signed it, I pulled out the old proposal, the one Marcus had presented instead of me, and held it next to the new one, because I had built something better, and I had always been capable of something better. And this is the part where the universe comes to collect. So about 6 months after that, my mom called, and we hadn't really spoken in almost 2 years. She opened with, "Your father's not well," and my stomach dropped. But when I asked what was wrong, she told me he was physically fine. The business wasn't, because Marcus had fired the 2 best employees they had in some kind of power trip, and lost 3 major clients and took out a business loan to cover the losses and spent it on a boat. And the company was 3 months from shutting down completely, so my mom was calling to ask if I'd come back and help save it. I didn't say anything for a long time, long enough that she asked, "Are you still there?" And I told her I just needed a moment. So I told her I'd think about it, and I talked to my therapist and talked to my best friend and sat with it for 4 days. Then I called my parents and asked them to meet me at a coffee shop. Not the house, not the office, somewhere neutral. When I got there, they were already sitting, and my dad looked exhausted and my mom looked desperate. And I put a single piece of paper on the table and slid it across. It was a buyout offer, a fair one, real market value for a company that was barely alive. I'd buy it and rebuild it and run it under my name and my leadership with no role for Marcus. And my parents would get a lump sum and a royalty for 5 years. My dad stared at that paper for a long time, and then he looked up and said, "I always knew you had it in you." And I looked right back at him and said, "I knew it when I was 23. You just didn't. He signed and my mom signed and Marcus threatened to get a lawyer, but found out he had no legal standing because he'd never actually read the incorporation documents, the same ones I had helped draft years ago. So I bought the company and rebranded it under my name and rehired the 2 employees Marcus had fired. And in the first year, I landed 2 more commercial contracts, and I ended my post with this. I don't feel victorious, I feel tired and a little sad, but I feel like myself for the first time in a long time. And that's enough. That last line is the one I keep coming back to because it was never about revenge. It was about the moment she finally stopped waiting for people to see her and just built something they couldn't ignore. And if this hit you, drop it in the comments because I read all of them, and I'll see you in the next one.